Biden unquestionably did more on climate change than any of his predecessors.
That's Michael Gerard. I called him up the week before the inauguration to better understand Biden's climate legacy and Trump's risk of rolling it all back. For those of you who don't remember, this is Donald Trump's stance on climate.
It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay? It's a hoax.
I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. Drill, baby, drill.
But some of Biden's legacy may be harder to budge than Trump hopes.
The largest part of his climate legacy is the Inflation Reduction Act, which provided an enormous amount of money for clean energy and various other forms of energy.
The Inflation Reduction Act is also the most significant investment ever in climate change. Ever.
The Trump administration may try to repeal that statute. I don't think they'll be able to repeal all of it.
Here's how Trump may try and either fail or succeed in rolling back Biden's climate policies. And he's already getting started. On his first day in office, Trump rescinded most of Biden's executive orders on climate and energy and issued a series of his own. He directed his administration to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, to put a pause on offshore wind leases, and to drop environmental justice as a priority, among other actions. But some of Donald Trump's orders and directives don't mean anything has changed yet, and some are likely to be challenged in court. For example, one of Biden's last actions in office was to withdraw 625 million acres of federal waters from offshore drilling, meaning those areas are off limits to oil and gas companies.
President Trump got into office and with an executive order, he reversed that ban. That 625 million acres is back on our balance sheet, including some of those acres are where? They're in the Gulf of America.
Can he?
The statute does not say anything about putting withdrawn lands back. Trump may try to put it back, and that'll end up in court.
As Michael said, the $370 billion Inflation Reduction Act is the shining jewel of Biden's climate legacy. Trump may try to revoke that, but it might not be in his best interest to do so.
Most of the money under the Inflation Reduction Act is going to red districts, to congressional districts represented by Republican members of Congress. But those members of Congress will not be enthusiastic about repealing a law that is sending a lot of money and creating a lot of jobs in their districts. So rather than a wholesale repeal of the Inflation Reduction Act, I think we'll see parts of it taken away.
Plus, Michael says, the government has already spent a lot of the money allocated in the IRA in things like grants.
There are going to be fights over how much of that can be canceled or clawed back by the federal government. I expect we'll see a good amount of litigation.
At EPA, we have something called the Water Sense program, where there are standards that are placed on faucets, for example. And what's important for us is to overhaul this as quickly as we possibly can.
So this is not an overnight process. It's gonna be a big fight, hand-to-hand legal combat. And meanwhile, it's still on the books, which is not to say that the government will enforce it. We'll also see the phenomenon where there are various laws that the government is not enforcing, but that citizens can go to court to try to enforce. So, for example, if a factory is violating its air pollution permit, it may be that EPA under Trump won't take action, but citizens can go to court, can go to federal court, and ask the court to compel the company to take action.
Environmental advocacy groups, for instance, frequently sue the government when they feel it hasn't taken appropriate action. For the people who work at federal agencies like the EPA, Trump's attacks on science may have another cascading effect.
It took Biden quite a bit of time to rebuild the human capital in the agencies. It's going to be even tougher now with more people leaving and fewer of the brightest young people wanting to go to work for the federal government. their overall objective is to weaken the federal government, and I think on that they'll succeed to a certain extent.
So the big question is, with Trump in office, are we going to be able to meet our previous ambitious climate goals?
Even if the election had gone the other way, it would have been very, very challenging to meet the objective of net zero by 2050, even though the scientists tell us that's what we need to do. With Trump coming in, I think it's off the table. And the question will be, how close to it can we get? Every ton of greenhouse gas emissions matters. Nonetheless, a good deal of momentum was built up under Biden in the transition to clean energy. That's going to be difficult to stop. I think it'll be slowed down, but it won't be stopped.